Kai stood at the edge of the marketplace, looking out over the bustling scene in front of him. His mission on this distant alien world was to meet with the Council of Leaders to negotiate peace between humans and the various species that called the galaxy home. He wasn't sure what to expect, but he had heard the rumors about how the people here viewed humans, how they saw them as weak, as outsiders who didn't belong. The marketplace was full of life, with different creatures, from various planets exchanging goods, talking loudly and trading stories. There were towering beings with sharp features, quiet aliens with scales shimmering under the twin suns, and small, swift creatures that darted between the crowd. As Kai walked through the market, observing everything, he tried to ignore the whispers. He was used to the judgment that came with being a human on a foreign planet. Suddenly, a strange noise caught his attention. It was a gasp, followed by a thud. He turned toward the sound and saw a figure collapsed on the stone walkway. A group of aliens stood around the fallen figure, their faces a mix of curiosity and disdain. The woman, a tall alien with pale, silvery skin and short, delicate features, lay on the ground, struggling to rise. Her clothes were torn and she appeared to be in immense pain, her face twisted in distress. Kai's heart raced. He had seen many beings in distress during his travels, but this woman was different. There was something about her, something that tugged at his instincts. Without thinking, he rushed over to her, kneeling beside the fallen figure. The crowd stepped back, almost as if they were waiting for something to happen, yet no one stepped forward to help. "Are you all right?" Kai asked, his voice gentle. The alien woman looked up at him with wide, pained eyes. She flinched as if startled by his presence. Her breathing was shallow and she struggled to sit up. Her eyes locked onto his, filled with a strange mixture of confusion and fear. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice weak and trembling. I don't know what to do." Her words were barely audible, as if she had been in pain for a long time. Kai instinctively reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I'll help you. You don't have to suffer like this." The woman blinked, tears filling her eyes. She looked around at the crowd, who were still watching from a distance but did nothing to assist her. It was then that Kai realized she wasn't just in physical pain. There was something deeper here, something about the way the crowd avoided her that spoke volumes. "I don't deserve help," she said, her voice almost breaking. "I've failed. My people." "Everyone deserves help," Kai said, his tone firm but kind. "You don't have to face this alone." She looked at him, a flicker of disbelief crossing her face. "You're human," she said, as though the very idea of a human offering help was strange to her. "Yes," Kai replied, his voice calm but steady. "And I can help. What happened to you?" The woman hesitated for a long moment, her eyes drifting to the ground as though the very memory of her situation weighed heavily on her shoulders. Then with a sigh, she spoke in a quiet voice that barely reached his ears. "I am Lyra," she said. "I once served a noble family on this planet. I was meant to protect them, to honor them, to be their servant. But I was accused of a crime I did not commit. They cast me out, and I have been punished ever since." She paused, her eyes filled with shame. "I am nothing now. No family, no place. I have lost everything." Kai's heart ached for her. He could hear the pain in her words, the anguish of someone who had once known a life of importance, only to be torn down and left to suffer. She was more than just an outcast. She had been betrayed by the very people she had served. And now, she lay on the cold ground, begging for help. "You don't have to suffer alone," Kai said again, gently lifting her into a sitting position. "I'll help you." Lyra's eyes filled with tears as she looked up at him, her voice trembling as she spoke again. "Please, human," she whispered. "Let me serve you. Let me make things right again. I don't know what else to do." Kai hesitated, unsure of what to say. He had no idea what it meant for her to serve him. But one thing was clear. This woman, Lyra, had been broken by her past. She needed more than just help. She needed someone who could show her that she was worth something. that her value wasn't determined by her ability to serve others. "I don't know what you mean," Kai said slowly. "But I do know that you don't have to serve anyone to be worthy of help. You are more than just your past." Lyra's eyes glistened, and for a moment, it seemed as though a spark of hope had been rekindled in her. "Then please," she whispered, "just don't leave me like this." Kai nodded, determination rising within him. "I won't leave you." Kai gently helped Lyra to her feet, supporting her as they walked to a nearby bench. Her body felt frail in his grasp, as though she had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. She winced as she moved, her steps slow and unsteady. He could see the pain in her eyes, but there was also something else, an overwhelming sense of shame. Sitting her down carefully, Kai took a step back, trying to give her some space, though he remained close enough to assist her if needed. Lyra took a deep breath, her gaze fixed on the ground, her hands trembling slightly. Kai waited patiently, allowing her the time she needed. Finally, after what felt like a long silence, Lyra spoke again, her voice quiet but steady. "I was once a servant to a powerful family," she began, her words slow and deliberate. "Not just any servant. I was a protector, someone who was trusted to guard their most important secrets. I was their shield, their servant, their most loyal servant. I did everything for them. Everything." She paused, her chest rising and falling as she took in another shaky breath. Her eyes never lifted from the ground, but her voice continued, filled with sorrow. "Then, one day, a mistake was made. I was blamed for something I did not do. I don't know how it happened, but they said I betrayed them, that I had broken their trust. I never wanted to hurt them. I only ever wanted to serve." Her voice faltered as the words left her lips. "But they didn't care. They cast me out. They made sure I was left with nothing." Kai felt a sharp pang of sympathy for Lyra. She wasn't just a fallen servant. She had been a scapegoat, abandoned by those she had given everything to. To be betrayed by those you trusted the most was a kind of pain that was hard to understand unless you had experienced it. She continued, her voice trembling, but the pain was still evident in each word. "The family I served, they're powerful. They control so much of the planet. When they exiled me, they made sure no one would offer me help. No one would take me in." Lyra's hands clenched tightly in her lap. "I've been wandering ever since. But no matter where I go, no matter how far I run, I always carry the weight of what I've lost, and every time I look in a mirror, I see the person I used to be. But I am not that person anymore. I'm nothing. I'm no one." Kai felt his heart ache at her words. He couldn't imagine what it would feel like to lose everything you had known, everything you had worked for, only to be left with nothing. Lyra had given her life to serve others, and when she needed them the most, they had turned their backs on her. "Lyra," Kai said softly, his voice full of concern. "You're not nothing. You're still here, and that matters. You don't have to be defined by your past or the mistakes that others have made." She looked up at him then, her eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand," she whispered. "I was raised to believe that my worth was in serving others, that I was nothing without the people I served. But now that I've lost that, I don't know who I am anymore. I'm ashamed of what I've become, ashamed of failing them." Kai shook his head. "You're not failing anyone. You're just living your life, just like everyone else. You deserve to be free of that shame. You deserve to live for yourself, not for others." Lyra looked down at her hands again, and for a moment, it seemed like she was lost in her thoughts. The weight of her past was heavy on her, but Kai could see something in her eyes, a flicker of hope, however small. He knew it would take time for her to heal, but he believed that she could. "Please," she said after a long silence. "Please, human, let me serve you. Let me repay you for the kindness you've shown me. I don't know how to live any other way. I don't know how to live for myself." Kai's heart ached for her once more. He could hear the desperation in her voice, the need to prove herself worthy, but he knew that serving him would only keep her trapped in the past, bound by the chains of her old life. "Lyra, he said gently. You don't need to serve me. You don't owe me anything. You're free now. I'll help you find a way to live on your own terms. You don't have to keep carrying that burden. Lyra's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of gratitude. You're kind, she whispered. I don't know what I've done to deserve this, but I'm so thankful. Maybe one day I'll find a way to repay you. But for now, thank you. Kai smiled softly. You don't have to repay me, Lyra. Just take care of yourself. That's all that matters. As the two of them sat together, the bustling marketplace around them seemed to fade into the background. Lyra's past was still there, haunting her, but for the first time, she was given a chance to move forward. And Kai, though unsure of what the future held, knew that he had made the right decision by helping her. This was just the beginning of her journey, and his too. The days passed slowly for Kai and Lyra, as the human stayed by her. Side, helping her heal both physically and emotionally, he began to learn more about her. Lyra's wounds were deep, but they were not only physical. The emotional scars she carried were far heavier than anything her body had endured. Kai had known many people who had lost everything, but he had never met anyone like Lyra. She wasn't just a person who had been cast aside. She was someone who had spent her whole life in service to others, and now that purpose was gone. She had no idea what to do with herself. Lyra had been raised in a society where duty and service were everything. Her worth was measured by how well she served those in power. The concept of personal freedom was foreign to her. She didn't understand what it meant to live for herself, to make decisions that were only for her own happiness. Her shame was not just about what she had lost, but about who she was, who she had been told she should be. As the days went on, Lyra tried to adjust to her new life. She had never had the chance to choose for herself before, and it was harder than she had expected. She had never made decisions that were just about her. Everything she had done, every action, had been for others. Even now, despite Kai's kindness, she couldn't help but feel guilty for being free. Kai watched her closely, noticing the way she flinched when she made decisions, or when she even tried to enjoy something for herself. It broke his heart to see how difficult it was for her to trust in her own worth. She had spent so much of her life believing that serving others was the only thing that gave her value. Now she was trapped by the belief that she didn't matter unless she was doing something for someone else. One afternoon, as they sat together under the shade of a tree, Lyra spoke again, her voice hesitant. I don't understand, she said softly, her fingers playing with the grass beneath her. Why are you helping me? I have nothing to give you. I can't serve you the way I served others. I don't know how to live without being useful to someone. Kai sighed, looking out over the horizon. You don't need to serve me, Lyra. You don't need to be useful to anyone but yourself. You matter for who you are, not what you can do for others. You're not just a servant. You're a person with your own life and your own choices. Lyra's eyes flickered with uncertainty. But how do I live like that? How do I live without knowing my place? I've always had a purpose, a duty. Now, I don't know what to do with myself. Kai leaned forward, his voice calm and understanding. It's going to take time, Lyra, but you'll figure it out. You're not alone anymore. You don't have to carry that burden by yourself. The words felt good to Lyra, but they also scared her. She wasn't sure if she could trust herself enough to truly live without feeling like she was failing. She had spent so long defining herself by others' expectations that the thought of living freely felt almost impossible. That evening, Kai went for a walk, giving Lyra some time to reflect. As he walked alone through the quiet streets, he couldn't help but think about what she had said. Why was he helping her? What was his true motivation? He had come to this planet for a mission, to negotiate peace and establish stronger ties with the alien species. But somewhere along the way, he had found himself caring for someone who needed more than just physical help. He felt responsible for Lyra's well-being now. He couldn't stand to see her in so much pain, especially when that pain wasn't just from her body, but from the life she had lived. As much as he wanted to help her, he also knew that he couldn't fix everything for her. He couldn't change her past, and he couldn't change the way she saw herself. But he could give her something she hadn't had before: freedom. He could give her a chance to discover who she truly was, to live for herself. When he returned to the place where Lyra was resting, he found her sitting quietly, looking at the stars. She seemed lost in thought, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if she was even aware of his presence. "Lyra?" he called softly. She turned to him, her eyes tired but grateful. "Kai, I've been thinking about what you said about living for myself." He sat down beside her, careful not to crowd her space. "What did you decide?" "I'm not sure," she admitted. "It's hard, but I think I'm ready to try to live for myself. It's just, I need time. I need to figure out who I am without serving anyone." Kai smiled gently, feeling a small sense of relief. "And I'll be here whenever you need help. But remember, you don't have to do it alone." Lyra nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Thank you, Kai, for everything." Kai felt a warmth in his chest. He knew there was still a long road ahead for Lyra and for him too. But for the first time since meeting her, he believed she might truly find her way. And that belief was all he needed to keep moving forward, together. The days of quiet healing and growth were interrupted when a new challenge arrived. Lyra had been slowly finding her footing, taking small steps toward a life of independence. Kai had seen her change, her confidence growing with each passing day. But as much as she was learning to live for herself, her past was never far behind. One afternoon, while Lyra was out gathering food, a shadow loomed over the small house they had made their home. Kai was sitting by the window, watching the horizon, when he noticed a figure approaching. The figure was tall, with sharp features and a commanding presence. It was an alien, but not one Kai had seen before. The visitor wore the distinctive robes of a high-ranking member of Lyra's people. It was clear this person was someone of importance. As the figure drew closer, Kai stood, ready to greet whoever had come. He knew this was a moment of decision for Lyra, a moment where her past and present would collide. The alien stopped just outside the door, their gaze sharp and calculating. "I have come for her," the figure said, their voice cold and authoritative. Kai frowned, unsure of the situation. "Who are you?" he asked. "I am a representative of the ruling class of this planet," the alien responded. "I have come to take the servant back. She has been found guilty, and it is time for her to return and face her punishment." Kai felt a wave of anger rush through him, but he held his ground. "Lyra is not your servant anymore. She is free to make her own choices." The alien's expression did not change. "You do not understand," they said, their tone dismissive. "Her punishment is not something she can escape. She has broken the laws of our society, and it is my duty to bring her back." Just as the tension began to rise, Lyra appeared from around the corner, her face pale when she saw the visitor standing at the door. Her eyes met Kai's, filled with uncertainty. She had known this moment would come, but she wasn't ready for it. "Who is this?" she asked quietly. The alien turned to her. "Lyra," they said with a formal bow. "You have been summoned to return to your people. You must face the consequences of your actions. You are not free. You never were." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. The familiar weight of guilt settled back on her chest. She had known this would happen. She had hoped, perhaps, that she could escape it. But now it was here, and she couldn't run from it. I don't know if I can go back," Lyra whispered, her voice trembling. "They'll punish me again. I've failed them already." Kai stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her arm. "You don't have to go back, Lyra. You're not a servant anymore. You're not their property." Lyra looked at him, torn. She had fought so hard to escape her past, to reclaim her own identity, but now it felt like it was all slipping away. The alien representative's gaze was unyielding, and it felt as if the walls were closing in on her. The alien's voice cut, through her thoughts. You don't understand, human. This is not just a matter of law. It is a matter of honor. Lyra has dishonored herself, her family, and her people. She must return to face the judgment of those who rule our kind. Lyra's shoulders slumped, and for a moment she seemed to shrink under the weight of her past. The shame she had carried for so long seemed to flood her again, threatening to overwhelm her. She had been so close to living a new life, a life where she was free to choose her own path. But now, with the alien's words hanging in the air, it felt as though her past had come to claim her once more. Kai saw the pain in her eyes and understood the turmoil she was feeling. He couldn't imagine the weight of her cultural expectations, the pressure to follow rules that had been imposed on her since birth. But he knew one thing for sure. Lyra deserved a chance at a future, not a life of punishment and servitude. You don't have to go back, Kai repeated, his voice firm. Your life doesn't belong to anyone but you. They can't control you anymore. The alien's eyes narrowed, their patience running out. You are interfering in matters you do not understand, they said coldly. Lyra has no choice. She must return. Lyra stepped forward, her voice quiet but steady. I understand, she said, her words almost a whisper. I have failed, and I must face the consequences of my actions. But I don't know if I can live the way they want me to anymore. Kai's heart sank as he saw the conflict in her eyes. She wanted to be free, but the pressure of her past was so strong that it seemed to choke her. The alien's presence only served to remind her of the life she had tried to leave behind. Lyra, you have a choice, Kai said, his voice softer now. You don't have to go back. You don't have to follow the rules that have kept you chained. You have the right to choose your own future. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she nodded slowly. She wasn't sure if she was strong enough to resist the weight of her past, but she knew one thing. She didn't want to go back to being the person she had been. She didn't want to be trapped by the rules of a society that had never truly seen her for who she was. The alien representative took one last long look at her. You will regret this decision, they said with a tone of finality, before turning and walking away, leaving Lyra and Kai standing together in the quiet of the small home. Lyra stood frozen, her mind swirling with fear and doubt, but Kai remained by her side, steady and unshaken. For the first time in a long time, Lyra realized that perhaps it was time to let go of the past. Maybe, just maybe, she could walk into the future with her own choices guiding her path. The days that followed were filled with small moments of progress, but for Lyra, the struggle was far from over. While she had agreed to try and live for herself, the weight of her past continued to haunt her every move. She had spent her entire life believing that she was only valuable if she was serving others. Now, with no one to serve and no clear purpose, she felt lost. Kai watched her carefully, noticing the way she seemed to shrink back whenever a decision had to be made. She would hesitate, as if waiting for someone else to tell her what to do. But no one came. It was as though she couldn't help herself from trying to be useful to someone even when there was no need. She had been conditioned to think that her worth was tied to her actions, to her service. Now that she was free, she didn't know how to define herself. One afternoon, as they sat together on the balcony of the small dwelling Kai had found for them, Lyra spoke again, her voice soft and uncertain. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, she said, staring out at the horizon. I've tried, I really have, but every time I think about doing something for myself I feel wrong, like I'm breaking some rule. I've always been told that my value is in serving others, but now, I don't even know where to start. Kai listened quietly, his heart heavy with sympathy. He could understand her struggle better than he had expected. Though he had lived his life free of such constraints, he knew what it was like to feel like you didn't belong, like you had no place. Lyra's fear wasn't just about failing. It was about losing her identity. The only identity she had ever known. Lyra, Kai said gently, you don't have to feel guilty for taking care of yourself. No one is going to punish you for living your own life. You deserve to choose your path just like anyone else. Lyra shook her head. the doubt still in her eyes. But what if I don't know how to live without a purpose? What if I can't figure out who I am? All I've ever known is service, and now that it's gone, I feel empty. Kai was silent for a moment, thinking carefully about his response. I think you're wrong about one thing, he finally said. You're not empty. You just don't know it yet. You're more than what you've been told to be. You have your own worth, independent of anyone else. It's not about serving others. It's about finding out what you want, what makes you happy. Lyra looked at him, her face filled with confusion. But how do I do that? How do I even begin? Kai smiled softly, trying to reassure her. Maybe you don't need to have all the answers right now. Maybe you just need to take it one step at a time. Do something small for yourself, something just for you. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be something that makes you feel like you. Lyra thought about his words for a moment. It sounded so simple, but to her it felt like a challenge. For her entire life, she had never done anything for herself. Everything she did had been for others. She had never thought about her own needs, her own desires. But perhaps Kai was right. Perhaps the first step was to start small. I'll try, she said quietly, her voice filled with hesitation but also a small spark of hope. Over the next few days, Kai watched as Lyra began to take those small steps. At first, it was awkward. She would spend hours in thought, unable to make even the simplest decisions. Should she take a walk outside? Should she read a book? Each choice felt like a challenge, but each time, she took a breath and pushed herself to try. Slowly, she began to realize that making choices wasn't as hard as she had imagined. The world wasn't going to collapse if she did something just for herself. One afternoon, she returned from a walk, her face brighter than it had been in days. I did it, she said with a smile. I went to the market and bought something. For myself. It wasn't much, just a small piece of fruit, but it felt good. I chose it. No one told me to. I chose it for me. Kai's heart swelled with pride. That's a big step, Lyra. You should be proud. Lyra's smile grew wider, and for the first time since Kai had met her, she looked like she believed it. I feel like I'm starting to understand. Maybe this won't be so hard after all. But even as Lyra began to make progress, Kai knew that the road ahead would not be easy. She still carried the scars of her past, and those scars would take time to heal. But the important thing was that she was trying. She was taking those small steps even when they felt uncomfortable. And that, Kai believed, was the most important part of the journey. Later that evening, as they sat together under the stars, Kai looked at Lyra and smiled. You're doing great, Lyra. You're on your way. Lyra nodded, her expression thoughtful. It's going to take time, isn't it? Kai nodded. Yes, it will. But I believe you can do it. Lyra looked up at the sky, her gaze soft and distant. For the first time in a long while, she felt like there was a possibility for something new, something beyond the life she had been forced into. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time she felt like she could walk it. The days that followed the visit from the alien representative were filled with a heavy silence. Lyra couldn't shake the words from her mind. You must return, they had said. You have no choice. She had spent her entire life being told what her place was, and even now, despite the freedom she had fought so hard to find, the chains of her past threatened to pull her back. Kai watched as Lyra struggled in the days after the visit. She no longer wandered the streets with the tentative confidence she had begun to build. Now she spent long hours alone, staring out at the sky as though searching for something she couldn't find. He had hoped that the weight of her past wouldn't drag her back, but he saw the doubt in her eyes, the fear of failure and rejection. He knew this moment would come. There was always a chance that her past would catch up to her, but he hadn't expected it to happen so soon. The world outside was vast and full of possibilities, yet Lyra was trapped in a prison of guilt and tradition. She didn't know how to move forward, how to let go of the past and embrace a new future. It was late one evening when the moment of decision finally came. Kai was out gathering supplies when he received a message from the Alien Council. They had made their final demands. Lyra must return to face judgment, or there would be consequences for him as well. The message was clear, and the threat was unmistakable. Kai's heart sank as he read the words. The council was not just interested in Lyra anymore. They were now involved in his own fate. He knew he couldn't leave her to face them alone. If he didn't act, if he didn't stand up for her now, everything they had worked for could be lost. He returned to the house quickly, his mind racing. Lyra was sitting outside, her head lowered as she watched the setting sun. She didn't hear him approach, lost in her thoughts. For a moment, Kai simply watched her. She was still so fragile, still trying to find herself. And it hurt him to see her like this. "Lyra," he said softly, his voice breaking through her quiet reverie. She looked up, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "Kai, I don't know what to do anymore. They want me to return to face the consequences of my actions. I can't go back, but I don't know how to stay free either. I don't even know who I am anymore." Kai sat down beside her, his heart heavy. He could see the battle inside her. She was torn between the world she had known and the one she was trying to build for herself. Between duty and freedom. "I've received a message from the council," Kai said quietly. "They say if you don't return, there will be consequences for me. But more importantly, they say you must come back to face your punishment." Lyra's face paled and she looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "I knew this would happen. I don't deserve freedom. I was never meant to live for myself. I've failed." Kai's hand reached out, gently taking hers. "Lyra, you haven't failed. You are not a servant anymore. You are not bound to anyone's rules. You have the right to make your own choices, and I will stand by you whatever happens." Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. She had heard him, but it wasn't enough to silence the voice inside her, the voice that told her she was worthless, that she couldn't live without serving others. "I don't want you to face the council alone," Kai said, his voice firm, "but I can't let them take you back. You've already made a choice. You chose freedom, and I'm choosing to stand with you." Lyra turned to him, her face filled with confusion and fear. "But what will happen if we defy them? I don't know if I can live with the consequences of that." Kai took a deep breath. "I don't know what will happen either, but I do know that if we give in to them now, if we let them take you back, you'll never be free. You'll always be their servant, always be defined by their rules. I can't let you go back to that." For the first time in days, Lyra seemed to breathe a little easier. The weight on her chest wasn't gone, but there was a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She had been so afraid of the unknown, so afraid of losing control, but now she saw something different. She saw a chance to choose her own future. "What if we're making the wrong choice?" she asked, her voice small. Kai shook his head. "There's no right or wrong choice, only what feels true to us. And I believe you deserve to live your life on your own terms. Whatever happens, I'll be with you." Lyra's gaze softened as she looked at him, the tears finally falling. She had spent so much of her life alone, so much of it thinking she wasn't worth anything unless she was serving someone else. But now, for the first time, she felt like she wasn't alone. She had Kai by her side, and that made all the difference. "I'm ready," Lyra whispered. "I'm ready to face whatever comes, but I can't do it without you." Kai smiled and squeezed her hand. "You don't have to do it alone. We'll face it together." As they sat there, hand in hand, the sun dipped. Below the horizon, casting a golden light over the land. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, Lyra felt a sense of peace. She didn't know what would come next, but she knew that she was no longer defined by her past. And with Kai by her side, she believed that she could face anything. 3. Decision had been made. Kai and Lyra would not return to the way things had been. No matter what happened next, they would face the consequences together. There was no going back, and neither of them wanted to. The weight of the Alien Council's demand still hung in the air, but for the first time Lyra felt a strange sense of peace. The fear was still there, but it was now mixed with something new: hope. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Kai had gathered what little they owned, while Lyra took her time to gather her thoughts. She wasn't sure what would come next, but she was ready to face it. Whatever the council had planned for her, she was no longer afraid. She had found her voice, and with it, a sense of purpose. Kai, ever the protector, made sure they were prepared to leave at a moment's notice. He knew they couldn't stay where they were forever, not with the council watching them, but